Hello everybody, I hope you are great. Welcome to this new video series about programming web API through C++. This video series contains two videos. This is the first video. Let's start. In this video series, I'm going to show you how C++ can be used in modern web development. I'm going to implement simple calculator web application which has two parts. First part is calculator front end and second part is calculator back end. Alright, in this video I'll explain the first part, and in the next video I'll explain the second part. In the first section I will use React to implement the calculator web interface, and in the second section I will use the restbed C++ framework to implement calculator API. Through this course you'll be familiar with single page applications, JavaScript frameworks, and REST API. Let's start front-end section. I'm gonna use React to implement the calculator user interface. Alright, what is React? React is a JavaScript library for building interactive web user interface. In order to use React or any tools based in JavaScript, you'll need to know how to use NPM and Node.js. Alright, what is Node.js? JavaScript is a client-side programming language, which means it's processed in the browser. With Node.js, JavaScript can also be used outside the browser. Alright, what is NPM? NPM is a tool to download and install Node.js programs, plugins, modules, and so on. Alright, now before we start, pause the video and install Node.js and NPM. I've put a link below this video which helps you install NPM and Node.js. Alright. Now, to install React, run this command in the terminal. npm install create React app. Alright, if successful, you should be able to get version like this: npm create React app version. Alright, let's create a React app. I'm gonna use Visual Studio Code to develop this project. If you didn't install it yet, pause the video and install the Visual Studio Code. Alright, I've opened the Visual Studio Code. Alright, open new folder, create a new directory called web API with CPP. Then open the folder. Alright, in the terminal. Alright, there are a few ways to use and set up React. Fortunately, Facebook has created Create React App. This is a tool. This tool that brings everything you need to build a React app. It will create a live development server and use Webpack to automatically compile React. Alright, now run this command: npx create React app and React application name calculator front end. Once that finishes installing, move to the newly created directory cd calculator front end, and now run this command npm start. Once you run this command, a new window will pop up at localhost 3000 port with your new React app. If you look into the project structure, you'll see a public and src directory along with the node modules, git ignore, readme and package JSON files. Alright, the src directory will contain all JavaScript codes. Alright, in the public directory, our important file is index.html, which has a root HTML div element. In React, you can create components which are like custom reusable HTML elements to quickly and efficiently build user interfaces. Alright, React also has two interesting concepts called state and props, which are used to store and handle data. Alright, I'm going to design the user interface from bottom to up. I'm going to start off by designing a simple calculator button component. Alright, now make a new JavaScript file called, in src directory calculator button.js. Alright, and implement new React component. First, import React class from React library. Then write a simple function called calculator button, which gets an argument called props. Then return a simple HTML tag, input tag. Finally, we must export this component. At the first line, we have imported React. Then we have implemented the calculator button React component. And finally, we have exported it in order to be visible outside. Alright, we can implement React components through classes or simple functions. If a React component is implemented through function, it must get an argument. React passes props of components through this argument. Alright, in the body of function, a simple input HTML tag is returned. This is JSX syntax. JSX stands for JavaScript and XML. Through this feature, we can use and combine JavaScript and XML codes together. Alright, if you want to know how a React component can be used, you can modify app component app.js file like this. Import calculator button from calculator button file, and then remove some code. Alright, now create an object from calculator button like this. As you see, you can use React components like HTML tags. Alright, once you save this file, React automatically compile codes and you can see calculator button is rendered at the center of user interface. Alright, we need to display text inside calculator button. In fact, the calculator button tag must get an attribute like caption and then display the value of the caption attribute inside itself. Alright, now set the caption attribute of calculator button to hello world. Alright, React passes these attributes to components as props. Alright, calculator button component must get caption from props and then display it. Alright, now update the calculator button. Set the value attribute to props.caption. Alright, save files, and now you can see the caption attribute of calculator button is rendered. Alright, now it turns to designing all calculator buttons. Alright, create a new JavaScript file called calculator panel.js and implement new calculator panel React component. Import React from React library, import calculator button from calculator button file, and implement calculator panel function. At first, declare an array that contains all calculator buttons captions called captions, fills it with all calculator buttons caption. 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, multiply, 1, 2, 3, subtract operation, 0, point, clear button, add operation, and finally equal button. Alright, now create a calculator buttons array from captions array through map function. captions map return calculator button Alright, finally return the calculator buttons inside a div HTML tag. Alright, at the end we must export calculator panel component. Now update app component to render new calculator panel component. Change calculator button to calculator panel, calculator panel, and change calculator button tag to calculator panel and remove the caption attribute. Once you save the file, you can see calculator panel is rendered. Alright, we must arrange calculator buttons in a way that looks similar to a calculator. Alright, now declare new styles in index.css file. Declare new style called calculator grid container to arrange calculator buttons in a grid. Display grid template columns, grid template rows, grid gap, and padding. Then declare a style called calculator equal button to stretch equal button in a way which its width equal to the calculator width. Grid column, alright, now update calculator panel component to use these styles. Alright, set class name attribute of div HTML tag to calculator grid container. In React, we must use class name instead of class attribute in HTML tags because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. Also, update the calculator button component to use the calculator equal button style. Alright, set class name attribute of input HTML tag to props.caption if equal to equal symbol, then calculator equal button style, else null. Alright, this feature of React is called conditional rendering. Through this feature, we can use conditions in conjunction with HTML tags. Alright, now you can see arranged calculator buttons in a grid. The calculator needs a display. Alright, let's create new JavaScript file called in src directory called calculator display.js and implement new React component called calculator display. Import React from React library and implement a function called calculator display. Then return a simple input HTML tag. Set the value attribute to props.text and set the read-only attribute to true, because the calculated display value must change only by the props.text attribute, and the user must not be able to change the value of calculated display. Alright, and finally export this component. Alright, now we must add the calculator display component at the top of calculator panel. Import calculator display from calculator display file and add a calculator display tag at the top of calculator buttons. Once you save the file, you can see calculator display component is rendered. Alright, calculator buttons are disordered. We must declare a new style for calculator display in order to place it at the top of the calculator and also stretch its width to the width of the calculator. Alright, now declare new style in index.css file. Declare calculator display style and set grid column attribute. Alright, now update calculator display component to use calculator display style. Set the class name attribute to calculator display. Then you can see the results. Alright, if you click on each buttons, nothing happens. We must implement the behavior of calculator buttons. Alright, now we are going to implement these behaviors in a new React component called calculator. Now create new JavaScript file called calculator.js and implement a new calculator React component. First import React from React library, then import calculator panel from its file then implement new class called calculator. If you are going to implement the React component through classes, you must extend from React component class. Now implement the calculator button handlers in this class. First handler for operation buttons like add operation or divide button or subtract or multiply. Operation handler gets an argument called operation. Second handler for number buttons like 1, 2, 3 or so on. Number handler gets an argument called number. Next handler for dot button. Next handler for clear button. And finally equal handler. Alright, every class which extends React component must implement a render function. In the render function, I'm going to return a calculator panel tag inside a div HTML tag. Alright, return a div class name equal to calculator grid container, and then a calculator panel tag. Alright, now I'm going to pass these handlers through attributes to the calculator panel component. Alright, first number clicked attribute set to this number handler, and then bind the function to this object. Alright, I should mention that React components didn't bind this object to its functions. As you can see, we must bind this object to function handlers explicitly. Alright, next handler, operation clicked attribute to the this operation handler, bind to this object, then dot clicked attribute to this dot handler, bind this object, then equal clicked set to this equal handler, bind to this object, and finally clear handler, clear clicked attribute to this clear handler, bind this object. Alright, at the end we must export this new component. Alright, the calculator panel component must get function handlers of buttons and call these handlers when buttons are clicked. Alright, now update calculator panel component. Alright, I'm going to change captions array to buttons array and change all items of this array in a way which specifies two values of buttons. Text value and function handler. Number clicked and pass 7 number. Next item, text value and handler function. Text value and handler. For divide caption, text value and handler must set to props operation clicked and pass the operation divide. Next item, text and handler next item, text value and handler five. Next item, text value then handler. Multiply caption, text value and then handler and pass the multiply. Text value then handler 1. Next item, text value handler. Next item, handler subtract caption, text value, handler, excuse me, operation clicked, next item, text attribute, handler, dot caption, text and handler set to props dot clicked, clear caption, text value and handler set to clear clicked. Next item, add caption, text value and handler operation clicked and pass add operation, and finally equal caption, text and handler value equal clicked. All right, handler, every handler is an arrow function which calls the button's handler with proper arguments. All right, buttons handler are passed through props data structure. All right, now I'm gonna change map function and pass the handler to the button to the calculator button component through the onClick attribute. All right. Calculator button, caption and set new attribute on click to value dot handler and update the caption by value dot text. All right, now calculator button component must get the handler and call it when the button is clicked. All right, now update the calculator button component to handle the onClick event. All right, I almost forgot. Change the captions variable here to buttons. All right, then update calculator button. Set onClick attribute of input HTML tag to props dot onClick. All right, calculator component must set and update the text of calculator display every time which one of the calculator buttons are clicked. All right, now modify calculator component to update the calculator display text. All right, I'm going to implement the constructor function of the calculator in order to initialize the state object. Constructor must get props argument, then call super function with props argument, and then initialize state object with a variable called result. Alright, a state is a special object in React components. State is similar to props, but it's private and fully controlled by the component. State objects can contain several independent variables. Alright, in the render function, set the new attribute called result. Set result attribute to the result variable of state object. Alright, every time the state is updated, React renders the calculator panel component in order to display new results. Alright, now update calculator panel component to get the result attribute and updates the calculator display component. Alright, oh sorry, remove this extra backslash, save the file, and calculator panel. Alright, set the text attribute of calculator display tag to props.result. Alright, it causes the calculator display component to be updated when props.result is changed. Alright, I'm going to complete the implementation of function handlers in calculator component. Alright, let's start by number handler. Alright, first I'm gonna add new variables to the state object. Numbers array, which has 2 empty strings, and number index or number IDX, which is set to 0. Alright, all operations of this calculator are binary operations, which means operations need 2 numbers. Alright, I'm going to store these 2 numbers in numbers array. Alright, also number IDX specifies which number the user has entered, first number or second number. Alright, number handler is called when the user clicks on each number button, and number is passed to the handler through the number argument. Alright, in this function I'm going to update the numbers array in the state object. Alright, first declare new number, and then concat current number with number argument. Alright, then we must update the numbers array in the state object. Alright, I'm going to implement new function to update the numbers array called update number. Update number, which gets new number, then declare new numbers, and copy the numbers array. Now update new numbers, And finally update the state object through setState function. Update result variable to new numbers and current index, and update numbers array to new numbers. Alright, now we can use update number. This call update number, this update number, and pass new number as argument. Alright, bear in mind we must update state object only through the setState function. Alright, now I'm gonna complete the implementation of .handler function. Alright, this function must add dot to the numbers in order to cast them to the float numbers. Alright, declare new number variable and then concat the current number to dot, and then validate new number, and finally update the numbers array in the state object. We can use the update number function. Alright, now it turns to operation handler. Alright, first I'm gonna add a new variable to the state object called operation, in order to store the operation which is clicked by the user, and set to the empty string. Operation handler is called when one of these operations plus, minus, multiply, or divide are clicked. Alright, let's implement it. First, think about a situation when a user enters two numbers and then click on one of the operation buttons. Alright, in this situation, operation handler must call the equal handler function, which it equals to click on equal button. Alright, let's implement the first scenario. Check the number IDs to 1, and then call equal handler, and then return from function. This if expression means user has entered two numbers, first number and second number. Alright. Now think about another situation when user click on plus or minus buttons which didn't enter any numbers before. Alright, in this situation, operation handler must add a plus or minus sign in front of the number. Alright, let's implement this scenario. if operation equal to subtract or minus, or operation equal to add, means plus operation, and current number equal to empty string. Then call number handler and pass the operation sign as argument. If operation equal to subtract, then pass minus symbol, else pass plus symbol, then return. Alright, finally we must update the operation variable in the state object. Alright, I'm gonna implement a new function to set a new operation to the state object called set operation. Let's implement this function, set operation and call set state function and update the operation variable. Alright, then we must update the number IDX in order to point out to the next number. I'm going to implement a new function to update number IDX called next number. Let's implement next number function. Declare new IDX variable and set to current index if zero equal to 1, else 0. And then update a state object through set a state function. First update result variable to this state numbers new index, and then update number IDX variable to new IDX. Now we can call next number function at this point. and then we can call set operation at this point. Alright, now implement equal handler. First, check user has entered 2 numbers. Or second number equal to empty string, then return. Alright. Then suppose an object is passed through props object called calculator API. Through this object we can call the calculator API. Alright, now suppose this object has a function called calculate. Which gets the first number, second number, operation, and a handler. Alright, we have called this function in order to send numbers and operation to the backend API. When the result is ready, the handler is called, and handler is called and result is passed through the handler argument. Alright, now in the handler we must update the result variable in the state object. Alright, I'm gonna implement new function in order to update the result variable in the state object. Implement set result function. Declare new numbers array. First number is result and second number is empty string. Then declare new number index and set to 0, and then update a state object through set state function. Update result variable to new numbers, new number index, then numbers array to new numbers, then number index to new number index, and finally operation to empty a string. Now we can call set result function in the handler and pass the result argument. sorry, something wrong. Correct this arrow function. Alright. Finally, I'm gonna implement clear handler. Alright. Clear handler must set the state object to initial state. This set state and set state object to initial state. Result variable set to empty string and numbers array to empty array and number index set to 0. Alright, now we must implement calculator API class. Alright, create new JavaScript file in src directory called calculator API.js. Class calculator API. Calculator API is a simple JavaScript class. It's not a React component. Alright, as I've mentioned, calculator API must have a calculate function which gets two numbers, operation, and a handler. And finally, we must export this class. Alright, first implement its constructor and inject the calculator API service address. Then declare member called service address and set to service address argument. Alright, now I'm going to implement a helper function to make resource addresses. Make URL gets number 1, number 2, and operation. Declare a variable called resource Alright. Finally, return new URL object. Pass resource variable as first argument and service address as base address. Alright. Let's implement calculate function. I'm going to use the fetch API in order to communicate with the calculator API. Alright. Call fetch API and then make the resource address then call then function, and get result and call result.json function. Then call response and here call the handler with result variable. All right, calculator backend API send the results as a JSON object. This JSON object has a variable called results, and it's equal to the result of the calculation. All right, and second handler for error. Call handler with arrow object, and you can write arrow in console. All right, now we must create an object from calculator API and pass it to the calculator class. All right, now modify app component. Remove calculator panel and import calculator and import calculator API. And then change the calculator panel tag to calculator, and then set the calculator API attribute to create new object from calculator API, and pass the calculator backend service address. All right, look at the terminal. Something wrong in completion in calculator.js file, line 90. Alright, at this point, this operation variable is not declared. This state operation, I mean. Congratulations, you have completed the calculator front end section. Now you can see the calculator front end. If you click on any number buttons, the number is displayed, and if you click on equal button, then it gets an error because the calculator backend API is not implemented yet. Alright, I hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, please subscribe and watch the second part of this course. Thank you. See you later.